After days of presidential put-downs, Jeff Sessions' White House future has been in doubt. But if reports out today are true, he's breathing a big sigh of relief. The Associated Press says new White House Chief of Staff John Kelly called Sessions to reassure him that he's safe in his job. But even in those uncertain times, Sessions has been steaming full speed ahead, taking on affirmative action, gay rights, so-called sanctuary cities. Just today, the Justice Department sent letters to the cities of Baltimore, Albuquerque, Stockton, and San Bernardino, telling them they will not be eligible for a new program that would help them crack down on drug trafficking and gang crime unless they cooperate with federal immigration authorities. Then there's the affirmative action battle. On Tuesday, the New York Times reported the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division is looking at investigating and suing over college affirmative action admissions policies that discriminate against white applicants. As for gay rights, the department filed court papers last week arguing civil rights law does not protect employees from being fired over their sexual orientations. So is Sessions taking the Justice Department back to the Stone Age? Joining me to debate are Michael Curry. Michael is former president of the Boston NAACP, current chair of the National NAACP Advocacy and Policy Committee. Good to see you, Michael. Frank McNamara, former U.S. attorney, current Trump supporter, who was in the war room on election night. Frank, it's good to see you, too.
Nice to be here, Jim.
Is it not fair to say, whether you like it or not, that on things like this potential litigation around discrimination against whites in college admission, the gay rights thing, workplace discrimination laws not covering gays, he is turning back the clock? Some may like that, but that is a factually accurate description, is it not?
I think the pendulum is swinging back and there's some correction that's taking place. No one will question the invidious nature of slavery and the need to make remedial steps at all levels to repair the structural injustice. Nobody questions that. But there comes a time in the history of the Republic when we say, isn't it time to judge all men by the quality of their character rather than the color of their skin?
So we're beyond that,
and I think we're at, the question is, are we at that point?
Are whites being discriminated against in college admissions?
Yes, they are. On race-based admissions policies, they are, which, by the way, are violations of the Equal Protection Clause.
Well, the Supreme Court says it can be a factor. They can't have quotas. So are we just making a correction here, Michael Curry?
Absolutely not. I think it's historically inaccurate. One, I think it's always troubling me we have to go back to slavery, because the reality is there's institutional racism, structural racism that we still see today. I think the data is coming out. We're seeing it in health care and in criminal justice with mass incarceration. We're seeing doctors treat people differently. And now the truth is catching up to history. And now we have an understanding that we still have to do things to undo that history, the vestiges of racism. It's troubling to me that folks want to sort of pretend that it didn't exist and just start over, when in fact colleges are still predominantly white, and that there's still a barrier for people of color.
Even though Harvard today, we saw majority non-white admissions.
Exceptions to school, but across the board.
But wait a second, are you suggesting that he's wrong, that all men and women today in 2017 are created and treated equally? I mean, is that what you were saying?
No, I don't think. I think there are all kinds of injustices in this country, all kinds.
But
I think it's time on the question regarding affirmative action.
We've gone too far.
It's time now in the Republic to invoke and execute Martin Luther King's.
Are you troubled when a guy who is openly gay and an employer acknowledges he was fired because of his sexual orientation, that the Justice Department argues that he is not covered by civil rights laws that relate to workplace discrimination?
There are two parts to that question. Am I bothered by the injustice? Yes, I am.
But
is the Justice Department's interpretation of the civil rights laws accurate or correct? Probably.
You know, as I'm looking at you, I forgot, because you've told me before, you were U.S. Attorney here when Sessions was the U.S. Attorney from Alabama.
In Alabama, correct.
So you're a fan of Trump. I know you are.
Very much.
Are you a fan of the way the president has treated your former colleague?
Well, Trump, as you've heard me say, has stylistic inadequacies, okay, which differ from my own.
You think Jeff Sessions would say that?
I think there are two things that are happening. Number one, Jeff has been in Washington a long time, and I think what Trump is doing is, A, lighting a fire under my good friend Jeff Sessions. B,
by humiliating him.
Well, you know, by kicking him in the butt, telling him to move. Action, a man is to act.
So you're okay with it as the bottom line?
I'm okay with that. But one other thing, he's carved out an area that now gives Jeff much more latitude than he had before Trump started beating him in public.
Let's see if we can have some agreement on this. Here is Donald Trump in Long Island not so long ago, and then Sarah Huckabee Sanders explaining Donald Trump, his spokesperson. I think it was on Monday. Here it is.
Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, the way you put their hand over. Like, don't hit their head, and they've just killed somebody, don't hit their head. I said, you can take the hand away, okay?
I believe he was making a joke at the time.
Believe he was making a joke at the time?
Yeah, I think it was a joke, but it speaks to his policy, right? Jeff Sessions is really undoing the work that was done post-Ferguson in Chicago and Baltimore that pointed out police abuses.
He doesn't like the consent decrees.
Right, doesn't like the consent decrees. And the president, quite frankly, is feeding the red meat to the base, which wants to overturn affirmative action, which are sick of Black Lives Matter, which... And to me, this was an offense to many of us who've been championing civil rights and understand that all cops are not bad, but there are abuses throughout the system.
Wasn't he basically saying, Frank, police brutality in certain circumstances, if the guy or woman has done something really bad, it's okay? Isn't that what he said?
Of course not. Of course
what was
not.
he saying?
Nobody countenances buzzsaw police tactics.
Didn't he just
Nobody
there?
countenances that. And I will acknowledge there are bad apples in every bunch. There are bad apple Muslims. There are bad apple cops.
No, but excuse me. Donald Trump seemed to be saying if there's a bad apple about to go in the back seat of your police car, then you can treat him
Violate their
like
rights.
an apple.
And he didn't say violate their rights.
He
He
didn't
didn't do
have to.
anything like that. He didn't do anything like that. He said the fetishistic concern over how people may have been treated on the margin doesn't take away from the fact that they ought to be in jail.
What is your reaction, if I may, to the fact that a lot of police leaders, including our own in Boston, Bill Evans, was not crazy about, he says, this, and I'm paraphrasing, this is undoing the kind of trust we're trying to build with communities and for which they are praised, this community cop bond thing.
I didn't hear Evans' statement. I don't know the
A lot of
context
cop
in which
leaders
it
criticized him.
was made.
I know Commissioner Evans, and we've had this conversation regularly about policing, not only here but across the country. Police of good conscience who are now awakening to the fact that there are abuses within their police departments. They know that there are racist folks on their police departments that they can have a challenge getting rid of, and that it plays out on the street. And the reality is the president is feeding that mentality, that there are folks who will hear that message and say, I can abuse a person who's a suspect in a case, and that should be a concern to anybody who cares about
Is that a correction, too, by the way? Because he is turning back the clock. We know what the rules of the game is. Is Jeff Sessions making a correction there through Donald Trump on how people taken into custody are to be treated?
No, I don't think that's the case, and I would agree with Mike. Nobody, people who are given a badge and a gun have power, and we see every day how people abuse power. Not just people with badges and guns, but people in the political class. Police officers are bureaucrats too. They're public employees. Their jobs are safe. They're unionized. And there is a danger that these guys will abuse that power.
Can we hold right there? Before you only have 30 seconds left, what's the NAACP doing in Missouri? Can you explain?
The NAACP president took a position and said that it was a travel advisory, people not to come to Missouri.
Why?
Because there's discrimination. There was a recent bill that was passed that the governor signed that'll go in effect, I think, in August, that'll make it harder to bring discrimination cases against employers. And the sponsor of that bill has a discrimination complaint filed against his company. So it's almost like the Green Books from the 1936 that says, here's where you shouldn't go, here's where you should shop, avoid these discriminating places, and we're here again.
Frank, good to see you. I know you have a bad hand,
good to
so we'll
see
do
you,
this one.
Jim.
Thanks for
Mike.
Michael Curry. Appreciate your time.
Mike.